Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next Ask Me Anything session. My name is Wingee Sampaio, and I'm the Global Program Director for the Cartier Women Initiative. Today, I'm very pleasantly joined by Margaret, a CEO and founder of Ananda Device and a Cartier Women Initiative 2019 Fellow, and also Thomas from Hello Tomorrow, he's a startup and investor ecosystem manager at Hello Tomorrow. Welcome, Margaret and Thomas. In the meantime, we would love to see who's in the audience, and so please feel free to comment on the science and technology pioneering issue that you're working on and share with us a bit about yourself. So in the meantime, let me share with you also why Cartier have decided to focus on supporting women impact entrepreneurs. For us, our vision is really a world in which every woman entrepreneur driving change can achieve her full potential. And in doing so, we have created a program this year to specifically support science and technology pioneers. We're seeking outstanding women entrepreneurs in the science and technology field. And in this new category that we're launching this year, it is in collaboration with Hello Tomorrow. So who should be applying? So I'm going to hand this over to Thomas to share with us the eligibility criteria that we have designed it together for this edition.
Thank you, Wingee. So for this specific Science and Technology Pioneer Award, we're looking at women entrepreneurs who created technological and science-focused startup. So this is the first and quite important eligibility criteria. The business needs to be based on the development of a new technology, a complex engineering process, or based on a scientific discovery. It should not only be based on a disruptive business model. This means that you need to spend some time in R&D before being able to have a final product or final technology to commercialize. So usually as an indication, we say that going from an idea to commercialization should take at least 2 years. This is just like a rough estimation. It could take a lot more if you're, for instance, in life sciences developing new medicines, for instance. But it should not be shorter than that. We're looking for for-profit businesses, so non-profit organizations are not eligible. And we're looking for this award for early stage businesses. This means early stage, it should be minimum TRL 4. So that means at least you have a proof of concept for your technology. Technology has been validated in a lab environment, and you should be in the process of producing a prototype at least. So this is the minimum requirement in terms of early stage. And then we will go up until a business that is commercializing its final or its core product for a maximum of 5 years. It doesn't matter if you're commercializing like side products or like selling consulting services, for instance, and you're still developing your main product. But if you already have your main product on the market, it should not be for more than 5 years. We're looking for impact-focused businesses. So you should meet at least one of the UN SDGs. And the other eligibility criteria, you should have, well, English proficiency. You should be age like 18 or more. And you should commit some time to the program, which is up to 4 hours per week for the duration of the fellowship program. And there's 1 week in-person preparatory training that you should be able to commit to. To tell you a bit more about the selection criteria, so we have 7 selection criteria. The first one, it's directly linked to the eligibility criteria, is the technological innovation. So as I was saying, business should be based on development of a new technology, and not only, you should not only be using like off-the-shelf bricks or off-the-shelf technologies that you are like repackaging or using for a new business case. So we will really be looking at the novelty of the technology that you're developing. The second selection criteria is the market and the access strategy. So for that, we're looking at how large the market is. Is it a growing market? And do you have a clear competitive advantage compared to your competitors and a clear market access strategy? So as we're looking for early stage startups, it's obviously if you're still in the stage of developing your product, you're not yet on the market, but we need to know that you have a clear view on how to access the market, that you know exactly like how big it is, and that you have done studies about the competition, not only like existing competitors, but also like upcoming competitors on the market, especially if you're entering a market that is a nascent market or not yet mature market. In terms of access strategy, you need to know like what are the risks in accessing this market. Is it a regulating market, for instance, and things like that. Third selection criteria, the business model, sustainability, and the development plan. So here we'll be looking for scalable, realistic, sustainable, and well-defined business models. For earlier stage businesses, especially so the ones that are not commercializing their product yet, you should have a clear development plan to reach like first industrialization, commercialization, and then growth phase. So obviously, we'll be looking at slightly different indicators, whether you are commercializing your product or not. But basically, startups that are pre or post commercializations have the same chances of being selected. It's just that if you're commercializing your products, you will be looking a bit more at the numbers, the traction that you already have, the revenues. And if you're not yet commercializing your product, we'll be looking a bit more at how well defined the business model and the development plan is.
The fourth characteristic that we're looking for is embedded positive social impact, and this is social and environmental impact. Here we're looking for businesses that specifically was created with the intention of driving social and environmental change. You would have thought a bit about why you thought the science and technology can be applied to creating and making this impact. And so here we're really trying to look to see if you have developed some form of theory of change, what your intention is around social impact or environmental impact, and then how you have started measuring it, even if it was just an estimated basis or intention of how you might want to measure it. The number 5 is our leadership and characteristic. And this is important for us because we are looking for value alignment with the Cartier Women Initiative. And so we look for individuals who are curious, who are open-minded, who are generous, sharing respect, rigor, and independence. And so these are really important values to Cartier, and we want to make sure that our community of participants within the Cartier Women Initiative is also shares the same values. Number 6 is the quality of the submission. This is important because it is a program where there's multiple submission over time. And so initially there's the application form, but thereafter we will sort of conduct due diligence on the very top candidates, and the due diligence responses are also important to us. And then of course there will be a presentation in front of the jury. And so we also want to make sure that we integrate some way of evaluating the quality of the submission. And last but not least is the commitment to the values of the Cartier Women Initiative. And this is important because the Cartier Women Initiative, as I've shared, the vision is to empower women entrepreneurs to create and realize their full potential. And we want to look for other women who are supporters of other women entrepreneurs and who will serve as role models to other women entrepreneurs starting out in the space. And so the 7 criteria is important to us in terms of assessing that. And so with that, we're going to move on to a segment of interviewing Margaret, who's one of our past fellows in the program. And so Margaret, maybe you can tell us a bit first about yourself and about Ananda Device.
Thank you so much. I think this is a great opportunity to answer the questions. And while you were there describing the price, I thought how useful this would be for me when I first started this journey. And I have been working a lot to support female entrepreneurs and also female women founders and women in science. And it's a pleasure to be here and to talk to all of you. So I'm Margaret. I have started my career. I have a PhD in pharmacology and biochemistry. So I spent most of my career trying to accelerate drug development, and first in academia, then I got a position as a professor. And I decided I didn't have the right tools to pursue my challenge. So I came to Canada about 15 years ago. I started working at McGill, where we developed a lot of tools to grow human tissue on a chip so that we could accelerate the development of new drugs for different applications, mostly focused on neuroscience and neurological diseases such as Parkinson, Alzheimer's, chronic pain, and so on. Finally, after 10 years, I realized that, I develop a lot of things. It's really great. But if we keep publishing papers and keep it in the lab, it will be hard for other people to have access to it. And to really bring it to the market, I launched my company in 2015. And now, 5 years later, we have 3 labs. We have contracts we signed another contract last week. So we have contracts with 3 Fortune 500 biopharmaceutical companies. We were a finalist of the Cartier Women's Initiative Awards, also from the Hello Tomorrow Challenge. And in total, we won 25 prizes in science and innovation. And we have been pushing the envelope. So let's make sure less people are suffering and in pain, and that we can spread our technology to be used in the most different applications to help other people have different lives, especially in the current situation.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Margaret. Yes, it was so great. And Margaret, I guess just to emphasize, I guess you were part of our program in 2019. So that was I guess when you applied, it was the 3rd year of your business operation. Is that correct then?
Exactly.
Or yeah. And then I guess when you were done with the program, it was, I guess, the 4th year. Okay, we get a lot of questions around the year of formation and all of that, so I figured it might be helpful to clarify for everyone. What is your experience with the Cartier Women Initiative, and what might be some highlights and key lessons that you felt you have learned in the journey? Yeah.
I think it was really important. One of the things I realized with the Cartier Women's Initiative, it's the importance of the impact, the environmental, the impact our company has in the world, and how important it is for us as founders to define the company as we think, according to our values. Because sometimes I've been also through several other crises, and it's all about push, sales, and, do whatever you need to do to come to the market. And after the Cartier initiative, it was very clear for me, the importance of my impact, especially because I also went to the INSEAD event, which is a social entrepreneurship course, which was extremely valuable because sometimes, we go through all this venture capitalists and everything, and everyone was like, what about the profits and how much money are you making and how many clients? But there's so much behind it as well. First are your values for yourself, and why are you doing this? Are you really doing this to become a billionaire, or are you doing this to help others, or both? It's possible to do both, and there's plenty of people that really value both, that really value impact, that really value transparency, and really value how you change the world. I think especially when I went through the INSEAD program, because sometimes, you read the news and you think, oh my God, the world is on fire, nobody cares, they're burning the forest, the diseases are spreading, nobody's doing anything. And then I went there, and in our group, besides the Cartier team, there were investors from Switzerland. There were people from major corporations, really major corporations, that were there learning how can we invest in impact. And we were on the same table discussing. Everyone has this view now, we have to change the world we're in, because the way it is, it's not working. Yeah. So it was definitely a great experience. Thank you, Cartier.
Oh, we're so glad. Yes, I think the INSEAD, the scholarship to INSEAD social entrepreneurship program is definitely one of the key component of our human capital support. The other 2 components, just to mention, includes a program on speaking to inspire, to ensure that as you're advocating for the impact you're trying to create in the world, that you have the tools to advocate for it. And then the other component is a strategic financial mindset, which also helps you with thinking through how does the impact you want to create translate into actual financials that you can have a sustainable business model. So that is terrific. So our next question for Margaret is, what about your experience with Hello Tomorrow? I'm going to ask on behalf of Thomas. How did you think about your experience there, and how did it work out?
Yeah, I have to be very honest. So when I went to Europe, so I'm based in Canada. So I went to Europe to close a deal with a client who has ordered 10,000 of our products, and I was extremely happy. And when I arrived in Europe, the client, they had a problem with something else, and they said they could not sign the deal with us. And I was almost depressed. It was a Friday, and the Hello Tomorrow, I think, was on the weekend. So I took the train to Paris, from Germany to Paris, and I came at the price like, what is there to lose? I just gave my full speech, full of heart. I'm here, and that's it. And then L'Oreal was there. It was one of the sponsors, and they got interested in my technology. And then we signed our first contract with a major corporation. So that's the life of every entrepreneur. One day you're up, or the other day you're down, and then you go up again. It's especially at the beginning, and especially for us in health sciences, it's really challenging. We're not developing a new app that you start in your garage. You have a PhD, you have a group of highly qualified people, and it takes some time to go to the market. Especially if you have a disruptive technology, it's challenging. But my experience with Hello Tomorrow, it was an amazing platform for us to get our first big contract and to move on to others in the future.
Oh, fantastic. And Thomas, maybe this is a good time to ask you a bit about the corporate access, because I know that is a big key hallmark of Hello Tomorrow. Can you share with the group a bit about this?
Yes, so in Hello Tomorrow, we've been focusing for the past few years on fostering connection between the actors in the deep tech ecosystem. And so we run a competition for deep tech startups, and we organize events where we connect the best deep tech entrepreneurs with corporates, with investors, with other entrepreneurs, with research centers. And so we're partnering, like Margaret said, with a lot of large corporates who sponsor different categories. So from biotech, healthcare, until like space and automotive, and we help connect entrepreneurs with those big corporates for like collaboration. It could be financial collaboration. Some of them are CVCs and want to invest in startups. It could be R&D collaboration. It could be more about selling technologies or selling products to those corporates. And so we do that during our events, and we also developing like online platform and online connections between startups and those corporates and investors. And the startups that will be selected for the Science and Technology Pioneer Award will join our Deep Tech Pioneers community at Hello Tomorrow, and we'll be able to help them with providing services to connect with relevant key actors from our network.
That is fantastic. So as you can see, our program was quite complementary. I feel like, as we were thinking about, creating this partnership with Hello Tomorrow, we felt like Hello Tomorrow is really strong in sort of all the access that the science and technology startups would have in terms of in the industry and the ecosystem. And we were trying to empower more women to be part of this ecosystem. So it's terrific. And Margaret, so how do you understand science and technology as a force for good? I think this is ultimately one of our key focus in launching this category. What advice might you have for other science and technology pioneers, especially women pioneers, in terms of leveraging the science and technology that they're creating as a force for good?
Yes, I think for women it's always a challenge. So we are a minority in science. We are also a minority as entrepreneurs. There's a lot, of personal commitment to open your company, and it's a challenge to find investors as well. In Canada, and only 4% of venture capital goes to women. So meeting with investors, having the right word, and being confident on what you have and what you can share is key. We have raised a few millions recently. And the good part was, finding the right investors with the right target and know when to say no, or when people cannot help you. And the impact we can have with the right investors and the right team is incredible. So even now, I know there are several other companies working. We have a project applied to COVID as well, but there are several others that are just, totally moved into the pandemic and can make a huge difference. I mean, science can, from vaccines to therapies to everything to reduce people's pains and suffering. We have to invest in that.
Great. And since you mentioned, like there's a gender gap in science and technology, and of course in the investor community, as you're an entrepreneur in this area for a few years now, any thoughts on how best to close the gender gap in this space?
I think we have to be out there more and more and talk more and more, because a lot of people never saw themselves as many women never saw themselves as CEO, never saw themselves as opening a company.
Mm-hmm.
And even myself, I know I decided to open a company when a company called us and asked for 10,000, and I said, well, I have to manufacture that and I have to go there. It was not, the idea didn't immediately came to my mind, but I never thought it would be a challenge. I just went on with it. But then when you go there, you see, oh, wait a minute, I'm the only one here in the room as a female. Everyone else are men. So especially for some investors, you have to be used to go into a room full of men and making difficult questions sometimes, in the sense
Yeah.
like, oh, I never thought a girl could open a company or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But trust yourself, and we have to see more women in this position. We have to see more women presenting, more women scientists, so that the younger ones get inspired and move along.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, this is why we're forming a community of women role models. So that's terrific. Okay, so I think the next segment of our Ask Me Anything session now, I think we should start addressing some of these open questions that's popping in. So, all right, so as part of the first question, and this one is from Anastasia, and it's a question to Margaret. What is the main difference that the Cartier Awards has changed for yourself personally and for Ananda Device as a business?
Yes, definitely. I mean, of course, there's the price, the financial price, but for me, the most impact was really with the INSEAD course. I think, having this team or this group of people around you supporting you. I was even thanking them before, because it has been a while now, over a year now, and we still have this WhatsApp group where one support each other, and listening to the stories, listening how they overcame their challenges, always posting new ideas and things that, other prices that we could apply. You have the feeling that you are supported. You have a team that is with you along the path, which can be very, it can be very solitary sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're owner of a business, sometimes you have your questions, but you cannot go to your team. You don't want to go to your family. Having other people that are experiencing the same and telling you, it's okay, tomorrow will be better. It's so important. And so the total support from this team, the INSEAD course was amazing. It has been really a great experience. I totally recommend to everyone.
Great. Well, it was a pleasure to have you also as part of the program, Margaret. You're one of the reasons to inspire us to create this new category.
I appreciate it.
All right, so our next question is from an anonymous. The time commitment is mentioned to be 4 hours per week, and I cannot find a clear answer as to the duration of the program. So maybe let me provide some details around that. So roughly, the duration of the program actually starts in January and ends in around roughly November, when the INSEAD ICEP program is. We put on average 4 hours per week to give you some indication, but the truth of the matter is actually in the first few months of the program, so I would say in the first 5 to 6 months of the program has a bit more content, and at that time it could take up to 4 hours per week for you. And as Thomas mentioned earlier, also, there's a 1 week in-person awards week where we have a series of in-person training as well as in-person award program. And then thereafter, actually, the second, I would say, from June timeframe to November, that actually the program then becomes much more flexible, I would say. And then during that timeframe, at the end of it, in November, is when we have the INSEAD ICEP program, which is also a 1 week in-person program that is either in Fontainebleau or Singapore. And so that is roughly how the program works. And I think this program does take time. And I think the time that you put into it, it will be sort of also what you get out of it. And so we often try to make sure that the entrepreneur knows that, you know, it's a program that actually requires some time commitment and investment on your part to participate in order for you to fully benefit from what we can offer. Great. So now as our next question, hopefully that answers your question. Okay. I think, Thomas, we have a question for you from Alexandra. Actually, nope. It looks like oh, I'm sorry. I think Alexandra got answer. Thank you for explaining. Oh, there's a question from, I think it's Sibolgil. And her question is, oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Okay. Okay, it is a question for Thomas. I'm sorry, the questions are jumping around a bit. Technology level readiness 4, basic technological components have been integrated to establish that they work together. So Prati has these questions around this level. Maybe you can just roughly explain again sort of what's the technology readiness level, its origin, and how we came about to leverage it for classifying the development of the company.
Yeah, so the technology readiness level is a scale to measure basically the readiness of the technology, so the development phase of the technology, and it goes from 1 to 9, 1 being the idea of the technology and 9 being the commercialization of the technology. And along the way, on the different steps, you have basically the first phase of working the premises of the technology, validated in a lab, validated in a live environment, industrializing the technology, commercializing the technology. TRL 4 is so the minimum TRL that we are looking for this award, means basically that the technology has been validated in a lab environment. Not yet in the real life environment. So it varies a bit depending on the industries, the sectors. For instance, in life sciences, it means that the technology has been validated on a model organism, but the clinical trials have not been done yet. For like if you're looking at a machine vision, so you're developing an algorithm to recognize, for instance, cars, like you're developing an autonomous car. If you have developed your algorithm and you know that it works when you present like images of cars, then it has been validated in the lab environment. So this is TRL 4. And then the next TRL, you'll basically have to validate that it works in a live environment. So if you put your car on the road, is it able to detect live cars coming in front of them? If you're developing, for instance, a water treatment solution, if you have like just bottles of dirty water and you apply your technology and you're able to clean this bottle of water in a lab, then it's validated in the lab environment. And afterwards, you'll have to basically do a prototype to let it work in real life, with different in temperatures, like working outside in the water treatment plant. So TRL 4 means, yes, in the lab, you know that the technology works, but you still have uncertainties that you need to validate on a real life environment.
Great, thank you, Thomas. Perfect. So we have a question from Prati, which is, how do you think the program structure will be modified in a post-COVID world? So maybe let me take this one. So during COVID times, we have learned so much around different ways of trying to reach the same objective virtually, digitally, and etc. And as part of this experience for the past, I would say 3 to 4 months, it has taught us so much about how we can build a stronger community together since we're a global initiative. And so historically, I would say we were able to connect with each other digitally, but not to the same extent as we were connected during the COVID times. And so I would say say one of the key learning outcomes for us during the COVID time period was for sure this idea of peer learning sessions amongst women entrepreneurs. That was actually many women on the program found very inspiring and helpful, especially since it was a time full of so much uncertainty, and everybody is trying to learn a bit from each other on sort of what they have encountered and how they might move going forward. And so I would say peer learning sessions will be one of the key components of our program going forward, and it was really tremendous. We also learned more about digital formats, and this is why just starting this year, we have these virtual Ask Me Anything session, which has been able to scale our ways of answering everyone's questions and sharing the community with everyone much more effectively, because historically, we used to travel to different cities. And so as you can imagine, during the 2 months of call for application period, we can only go to so many places. And we really weren't able to reach as many people. So it has really been terrific in terms of leveraging different technology on a digital basis to reach more people and to scale more of the work. That said, I would say for our overall program itself, I think for the next edition, we will still continue to sort of follow through with many of the digital components so that we can reach more folks more efficiently. But at the same time, we also really value the in-person connection. I think one thing that was, that we all missed it very much in this edition was the opportunity to connect all of the fellows in the class together. And so the opportunity that Margaret mentioned, which is the 1 week in person together in a location where you meet all the other women entrepreneurs that you have been, on the same WhatsApp group with for a long time. And then, of course, also then the next opportunity of being connected to the INSEAD ICEP community, which is an even wider community of social and environmental entrepreneurs, is really invaluable to build connection. And so we will still continue with, I would say, the mix of in-person connection, but also virtual connection for the program. So with that, oh, here we go. There's a lot more open questions. Will you consider drugs and medical devices as separate categories, and is there a minimum to market size that you will consider? Thomas, this sounds like a question for you.
Yes, so there aren't specific categories for specific industries or specific type of technologies, but the jury will of course be specialized in the different industries to review the different projects, but you will still be considered like within the only Science and Technology Pioneer Award category. As per the market size, there is no minimum size. The market size is not an eligibility criteria, it's a selection criteria, which means that obviously the bigger your market is, the better your score will be on this criteria. But this is not only the market size, it's market and access to the market. So your access strategy will also be taken into account for this criteria. And they have 7 criteria. So even if your market is not the biggest one ever, then you can still have a very strong application if you have a very strong score in the other criteria.
Great. And here we have a question from Lynn Becker, and this is a question for Margaret. She was wondering if you can explain your impression of the application process and maybe some do's and don'ts. This is a long time ago, Margaret. So
I think I'll start with the end of the question. So the do's and don'ts. Cartier is it's a much larger than we thought opportunity to expose yourself and your technology, and you'll be exposed to so many different people. And so the do's is definitely do your homework, check everyone involved, who are the judges, who are the people that are going to be there, try to create points in common and to really build a network from that, because that's what you take on the long term, and can be a very helpful journey. And help could come, from sources sometimes you don't even expect. Someone you met that is not in the same field as you are, but you started a conversation, you got interested, and the person introduced you to an aunt or a friend or someone that might later become your investor or a client or something. So it's a great opportunity to expose yourself. Don't be really careful with what you say, because everything we work with Cartier is recorded and will be there. and a lot of people watch it, and then they come back to you and then send messages. So we were at a technology company. We developed something to quickly connect neurons after injury. And when we explain the technology, a lot of people contact us and say, are you doing clinical trials? I have a friend who had an injury and would like to test, and you got the price. So we receive letters from a lot of people asking for that. So maybe clear cut, say it's an R&D tool, and other small words to better define what you do in the sense of, be more precise.
Oh, that is a great, yes, because actually, I mean, many times when we look at the application, especially for the science and tech heavy ones, I think it is important for it to be possible to be understood by someone who is looking at it from a business perspective. So that's a great tip, Margaret. And the elevator pitch, we're very focused on the elevator pitch, and make sure you can talk a bit about also what you do on a very succinct basis. So yeah. Terrific. And yes, and actually maybe just one more highlight based on Margaret's comment is like, we do very much focus on the social capital that we can help you build during the program. And so just in terms of media visibility, for example, for this current edition, we're up to about, I think, 85 press coverages for all 21 fellows that are part of the program in this cohort. And so we're really hoping to give you and your ideas the visibility that really deserves in the world. And so, so that takes a lot of hustling in terms of getting the media visibility, but also requires contribution from you in terms of being clear about sort of what you're about. Great, so we have some more questions here. Oh, here's a question from Olga. Her question is, last year Cartier's award was focused on commercialized business with sales and profit. Why did the Cartier initiative decide to focus on deep tech startup this year? Perhaps I could answer this question. So Olga, it's important to emphasize that this is a new category, but we're still keeping all 7 of the prior categories. And so the other 7 categories of regional awards will continue to focus on commercialized business that are creating social change in all the different regions in the world. But what we found is that given our experience with entrepreneurs like Margaret, which is that there's a group of entrepreneurs who are really focused on science and technology, and they're leading pioneers in the space, and their business model and their development cycle is different than other businesses. And so we, with the support of our CEO, we're able to carve out a new category and provide greater support to this ecosystem. And so, so it is a new category, but the other categories still exist. And so if your business is a better fit for the other categories, you should consider that as well. Oh, we have a question from Milena. And her question is, we are in the process of validation, which will be finalized hopefully by October. Does that mean we're eligible? We are already TRL 4. Thomas, what do you mean? What do you think?
Well, if you're already TRL 4, then you're eligible because you're TRL 4 or above. So yes.
Great, terrific. So we look forward to seeing your application, Milena. Where can I find the list of judges? That is on CartierWomenInitiative.com. So you'll be able to find out information there. Let's see. Can you explain more about the social impact criteria you're looking the participant to be able to support? This is a question from Indidra. So maybe let me take that, and maybe Margaret, you can also share a bit about sort of how you thought about social impact when you were applying. So the evaluation selection criteria of embedded social impact, we're looking for entrepreneurs who have created their business to solve a specific social or environmental challenge. And this is why we first asked you about sort of what UN SDG goals you would be sort of working towards. And then a second layer of social impact and environmental impact question that we ask you is around the IRIS Plus metrics. And the IRIS Plus metric is basically a framework for looking at social and environmental impact. And it had a series of impact metrics already that has been validated and shared by many impact investors in the community. And so we asked the entrepreneur to also see if their impact is actually one of those impact metrics. If it is, then we ask you to select that impact metric and share with us a bit about your initial results of those impact metrics, and then what your forecasted results is as you grow your business. If your business and impact metrics are not part of the IRIS metrics, that's okay too. Maybe you're working on something that's different. There's also an other category, and so there we would advise you to then share with us how you have been measuring impact, and then share with us the initial results and also the future projection. But that said, I would say, sometimes entrepreneurs when they're preparing the application, they're sometimes concerned that, oh, my impact metrics are not as developed as it should be. And I would encourage all of you to still apply, mainly because what we're looking for is your intent of your business, of rather you really started this business to create the social and environmental change. And then also is rather you have made any efforts towards thinking about how to measure that change. And so the intent and the starting to try to measure it is important. And as all impact entrepreneurs will tell you, their impact metrics evolves over time as their business matures. So, so that is something to keep in mind. Margaret, maybe do you have any thoughts to share with us a bit about how you thought about impact for your business and maybe how you currently measure it or how you intend to measure it in the future?
Yes, so there is usually every company you have your obvious impact, the social impact, it's just your motivation. Like we would like to develop faster medication for people with neurological diseases, and this is an impact, is something we would like to do. So now we have to measure it, and then when we break down, and it will help a lot just going to the United Nations website, taking a look, and then if you Google, there are plenty of tools to measure the impacts that are different. Not directly associated to your major goal or vision of the company, but comes with it. So one of the major impacts we have is we can reduce the use of animals for experimentation with our technology by at least 80%. This is amazing. I mean, it's such a respect for life as a whole, and it's in there. The other thing we always did from the beginning was test. We would focus more on Alzheimer's and diseases that affect mainly women, and to be able to compare, we always use the same amount of patients, male patients and female patients, and we get their cells to test. So we promote gender equality in health, which it's not much people there, or maybe we did not use this word before, but from the beginning for us, this was very important. So there's plenty of values on your company, how you promote gender equality, how you promote diversity in your team, how you can help the environment, using sustainable options. The other thing, we miniaturize all the tests. So now when people are testing viruses in our devices, they use 90% less volume, which decreased by 90% the toxic waste in the seas. So there's plenty of things that if you look properly with the right tools, you'll see and you can easily quantify. And please highlight that, because that's what we need.
We have a question from an anonymous. Let's see. The question is, if the company is building a new model of combining existing technology to develop a brand new platform, which hasn't been validated yet and they're pre-revenue, can they still apply? Thomas, what do you think about this? I think this is someone who's maybe trying to figure out rather they belong more in the science and technology category versus the regional awards.
So for the Science and Technology Pioneer Award, you really need to be developing a new technology or technology based on a new scientific discovery. If you're only leveraging existing technologies even if it's an innovative use case, then you won't be eligible to this award. So it's if you're not in the post-commercialization and don't have yet revenue, then you'll have to wait until you have revenues to be able to apply to the regional awards.
Yep, sounds good. And here we have a question from Amalia for Margaret. She's a biochemist too, and has high risk of scientific research, makes it hard to get initial support when the future product drug is at TRL4. How did you get your business started, and how did you get the initial funding? I have no funding yet and have not materialized my business because of that. Any advice?
Yes, so if you can start commercializing your product or start interviews with clients. I mean, would a product like this make sense to you? Make a lot of questions, make a survey, put a PowerPoint together saying, this will benefit this amount of people. This is the feedback I received from everyone in the field. This is what key opinion leaders say. And now who is with me? Then go for all the startup competitions you can see. As I said before, we won 25 startup competitions in science innovation. We really, went around showing our technology, showing what we have, to make sure that, you know, we brought awareness to people of of this problem, but also the importance of investors to join us. And then we found investors that are very well aligned with our goals as well. And they gave us our first seed money, which was enough for us to establish the first commercialization. Then we started offering services, and now those first investors came back with larger investors from the other region in Canada. And now finally we have a full lab, services, contracts, and we're moving along. I mean, it's very important to get feedback from the market to really validate your technology is needed, and there are people there willing to pay for it too, so you can become sustainable. And then go for well-aligned people, you know, people with, there's a lot of people there with money that want to do good and cannot find someone with the same values as they are. So go after them. And the Cartier's initiative is a great opportunity for networking and getting to know someone that knows someone that can help you in the future.
Great. We have a related question to this, which is from an anonymous attendee. Is there a pool of investor that Cartier would be introducing the winner and finalists after the event? Would Cartier consider investing too? And so, yes, we do have a community of investors who are committed to taking a look at woman-started impact businesses. And this comprises of traditional VC as well as impact investors. And it comprises of venture capital in terms of equity as well as debt. And also includes foundation, which are looking at straight out grants for other hybrid types of businesses. So, so we have been carefully curating this investor community. And while, you know, I think finding the right investor takes, you know, I think quite a bit of matchmaking. We hope that we can at least help you with some initial connection, and then hopefully that will blossom into something that, you know, will work out in the future. We have a question for you, Thomas. Do you prefer applications with higher TRLs and approved patents as compared to no patents?
No, there's no preference. Especially so concerning the TRL, basically, as I said, you have as much chance of being selected if you're like still TRL 4 or 5 in the early stage, or if you are commercializing your technology already. As per the patent question, it's like, you know, not all technologies are necessarily patentable, and it's not always the best way to protect your IP. Like if you're developing, you know, algorithm like AI algorithm for instance, it might not be the best strategy. So it really depends on your strategy. So we're not, it's not a like an eligibility criteria. We're not necessarily looking for patents, but you still need to have a strong IP behind your product and your technology.
Okay, great. And here we have another question from Sabon Gil. And she says, or he said, or she said probably, thank you for explaining the program. It is very exciting. Are there any exclusion? For example, I use tobacco plants as a vehicle to develop new proteins used to make various vaccines. Some funders will not fund a project that involves cigarette, tobacco, drugs, and alcohol. When it comes to our project, there's often a lot of discussion. Fascinating. What do you think, Thomas?
Well, you're not producing cigarettes. The outcome is to produce vaccine which fits into the impact that we're looking for this program. And so the use of the initial product that you use, the tobacco plants, I think in that case would not be very relevant based on the outcome that you want to produce. So that there might be a problem, for instance, if you are both looking at producing vaccines and also using tobacco to produce like, you know, tobacco related products like cigarettes also. Then yes, that would be kind of a problem. But if your sole purpose is to produce vaccines, then I don't see a problem with that. Do you agree with me, Wingee?
Yes, I think so too. Yeah, I mean, yeah. This is interesting. I have to say it's a new one for us, but yeah, from first look at this, I also believe that since you're not producing tobacco, I'm not sure why using the plant would be any issue for us. So, oh, but that is tough if investors have an aversion to this. Okay, our next question. So Anastasia, you have a question around ownership. I've read it a few times, but I'm not so clear about it. So I think we will write you back to get back to you on this question separately. And then we have a question from Deborah. If you're not successful, are there any supports? And so I presume, Deborah, you mean if you're not successful making to be one of the fellows in the program. So I would say yes, we do have many public webinars and community groups that you can be part of and sort of leverage off the other entrepreneurs and sort of their experiences. And then also on our website, we also frequently publish resources that are specific for women impact entrepreneurs. For example, at the moment, Meng has curated a really great list of COVID resources, specifically for impact entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general. So please do come and check in with us and follow us on our newsletter, where we will sort of share with you all of these resources that is available to just anybody in the community. Thomas, we have a question from Olga for you. How many startups will be attending Deep Tech Week?
So I don't know if it's the general event, so the Deep Tech Week and the Hello Tomorrow Global Summit. We're expecting over 1,000 startup and in total 5,000 attendees. I don't know if the question would be also like how many startups will be selected to get free passes to attend the summit and the Deep Tech Week. And in that case, that would be the 15 pre-selected startups. So not only the finalists for the award from the program, but 15 startups, yeah, 15 pre-selected ones.
Okay, great. Oh, we have a question from Alexandra. I'm not sure if you mentioned this before, but how many applications do you expect? And in other words, what is the success rate? I can tell you for the regional awards, we typically receive about 100 to 150 per region. Thomas, what about, I mean, it's our first year doing the science and technology category. And so I'm not so sure what we would expect. What do you think, Thomas? Do you have a guess?
It's hard because it's so it's a bit more specific than the regional awards, because we're covering only like science focused and technology focused startups. But in the meantime, the eligibility criteria in terms of development stage is a bit broader than the regional awards. So I would expect, yeah, several hundreds of applications for this first edition. Yes.
Great, fantastic. We have a question from, if you cannot share names of the judges yet for this category, can you clarify if they're going to be scientists, investors, industry leaders who will be reading the applications beyond the Cartier team? Sure. So the composition of the jury members typically is comprised of sort of 5 different personas, if you will. And one is usually an investor, one is an ecosystem builder, one is an academic, one is a past social and environmental impact entrepreneur that has been part of our program. And then last but not least is another entrepreneur who's a bit farther along in the cycle, so beyond early stage entrepreneur. And so we will be looking for these 5 personas, but within specifically the science and technology, the deep tech area. So hopefully they are a bit of combination of those characteristics that we're describing. All right, here's a question we have. Based on your eligibility criteria, our company has a strong business or market validation, but in terms of technology, it is an early stage, not prototype. But for the other grant, I presume you're talking about the other regional award, we're not yet in commercialization. Our system is tech-based. Where should we apply? Thomas, do you have any thoughts?
So if you're, So if you're not yet in commercialization, you can't apply to the regional awards this year anyway. And in terms of technology, then it needs to be, like when you say your system is tech-based, it depends if it's tech-based in the sense that it's existing technologies and not developing a new one, then you wouldn't be like eligible to the Science and Technology Pioneer Award either. If it's developing a new technology, then you would be. Yeah, it's not prototype yet, so it's also refers if you're developing a new technology. Is what I said. If you're TRL4, so it's a proof of concept and validated in the lab.
Yeah.
You can for if you have specific questions, I guess can ask me directly and give me a bit more detail about the technology, the product you're developing, and I can answer by email.
Great, thank you, Thomas. So with that, I think we're up to our last question. And another question we have from Anastasia, maybe I missed it, but how many semi-finalists are selected for this category? Thomas, do you want to share a bit about our funnel?
Yes, so in the first part of the selection process will be to pre-select 15 startups. And those 15 startups will go into the second part of the evaluation process. So they will be contacted again, they will be asked a few more questions, a few more details. And then the next step of the selection process will be to go down to the 3 finalists. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wingee.
Yes, and so by the late in the year, we will specifically have 3 fellows from this category join our overall cohort, and this is how we have 24 fellows in our program. And so for when we talk about our fellowship, which is from January to November, roughly it's the 24 fellows, and so 3 from each category or of the program. So great. So with that, I think that is all we have time for today. So thank you everyone for joining us for this wonderful Q&A. So thank you so much, Margaret, for all of your time today, and also Thomas for your time today and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye.